Um, Good afternoon, everybody. I don't know if we have kept the best or last at all, actually. I want to talk to you a little bit about digital optimization. But actually, more importantly than that, I'm going to ask a question, which I'm not going to answer, by the way, as well. So I'm probably breaking a number of rules straight from the outset. But one of the questions I've got is that we've been talking about huge amount of digital optimization. We've been talking about some fantastic technologies and everything else. But my question is more down to, so why is it not really taking off? Why is it not really buzzing? Why is not all the brands and the agencies in the world starting to utilize this stuff at the moment? And I do come back from a background where I've been implementing this stuff with some of the biggest brands in the world for over 30 odd years, and it's been very exciting. But it's still, as I now move into my new world, still asking the big million-dollar question in terms of, so why is it not happening? I also like to say one other thing before I go crashing on. I want to say a massive thank you to Chile, just in case I forget towards the end, because I think this event, as much as it's around the technology, it's also around the much bigger part that I think is important, which is talking about the entire supply chain. And I think the fact that they've organised these events and they're starting to continue these things, I think is bringing a lot of great-minded people together that are coming from different parts of the industry sector. So people that are doing it, living it, but also people that are perhaps investing in it and looking at how it's going to work and so forth. And I think this event is something that I think the industry needs massively. So I'm just sort of going, big, massive thank you to Chile for that. We all know this. We've all been living it. You know, we're in a massive digital marketing evolution. You know, all of us as consumers are working day in, day out to make the whole world even more complicated for brands and advertisers. You know, we're all basically trying to, as brands and advertisers, trying to win new business. We're trying to get more clients. We're trying to find out how we go and get to them. How do we talk to them on a one-to-one basis? That's getting more and more complicated. You know, the journey that we all go on and brands go on and clients go on is so much more complicated. Everybody in this room is a consumer. Everybody in this room uses a device to receive and to work alongside a brand in one way or another. But there is so many different variations. I always use the term omni-channel because I think that's the only way you can think about it in this way, that you have to consider that everything we do is around an omni-channel concept. Not more, just as important as that is also the data that we're getting from this information. So we're getting all our customers and all our clients receiving this information, producing volumes and volumes and volumes of data on a day-to-day basis, which we need to be able to consolidate and actually start building pictures of who our customer is, where our customer is, what's their interest, when are they actually looking at our piece of content, how are they looking at our piece of content. And we're up against a whole host of different brands. You know, each and one of us, these numbers do vary significantly, but every one of us around here at the moment is getting between 4.5 to 10,000 pieces of content, advertising material thrown at us on a daily basis. It's a huge amount of content. And obviously from a brand's point of view, we've got to try to cut through that quite quickly. So from my perspective, I'm talking about how do we embrace this digital marketing evolution, and what should we be doing? And I've started thinking about it slightly differently. As I said, I'm still posing that question of why is this not really happening at the moment? And I need you to hold on to that. But embracing the optimization, the whole concept of optimization is making something much more effective, a process that's better, that's more effective, that works, that can work again and again and again from a volume perspective. And it's proven that if you can optimize that and you can use that digital optimization, that you can actually really drive brand experience, brand loyalty, increase sales, we can get better cut through, and you can basically sell more services and product. That's what we as advertisers would want to be doing. As people that are producing content, ultimately what we're all trying to do is trying to help a client to win new business, to sell more product. That's ultimately what we're here to try to do. And then you look at some of the opportunities that have come up there. So everything I've heard today just plays back to this again and again and again and again and again. 78% faster to market. By utilizing this optimized world, by using this technology, by using these better processes, by using automation, you can get a much faster return to market, which has got to be critical. 60% more relevant content. By i.e., what I'm talking about there is the ability to localize it, talk on a one-to-one basis, because you know about your consumer, you know who you're talking to, you know how you should be talking to them, you know what channel you should be talking to them on, because they know this is how they receive their information better. And you have the ability to target that. That's back to this whole concept of omni-channel and being able to be much, much more targeted. And another one which I just find crazy when you start talking to brands, that all agencies, that you've got 62% saving in your costs. How can that not be something that you just turn around and go, let's do it. Why wouldn't we do it? It's huge amounts of opportunity. So let's come back to the question. So why isn't it happening? Why are people not doing this on a bigger scale? I'm not saying it's not happening, and we've heard some fantastic demonstrations and some stories around how people are doing it at the moment. And I will give you a few quotes in a second around how I've worked with some brands and we've delivered some great global award-winning campaigns around the world significantly quicker by using better technology. But it's not the norm, it's not the day-to-day, and that's what it puzzles me somewhat. So then you start looking at some stats and you start trying to dig deeper into this. And this is sort of just playing back to a number of things we've heard over from different speakers as we go through today. The quality of data. It always makes me smile when you actually look at all this and you look at the smallest word in our vocab, data, is probably got the biggest impact. I mean, it is huge because data is one of the most complex things you can understand. So 52% of the marketing world that we looked at are looking at saying that they need to improve the way that data is pulled together. Not so much the data the quality of the data, it's the consistency and how that's then pulled together as to build a persona around the people that we're talking to. This one's interesting because it's the strategic way from an execution point of view, and really what's at the heart of this question or this particular bit of information is it's the collaborative nature. And I've heard it a couple of times today again, where we look at silos. A lot of brands work with lots of different agencies and they come at this in a very, very siloed way. You talk about point of sale, you talk about social, you talk about online, you talk about digital, and you've got very different businesses or potentially agencies working in a very slightly different way, which doesn't give you that collaborative way of working. Customer journey mapping, again, the ability to be able to really, truly and understand who we're talking to. I've been lucky enough to work with one of the biggest fashion brands in the world, and the ability for them to target their customers globally is still one of the hardest things they can do. Even though they've got huge amounts of data coming from everywhere from their sectors around individuals that are buying their products, they still have this inability to be able to talk on a one-to-one basis. I think this next point I think is quite an important part, and I think it's something that's probably causing more problems than not, and that's the ability to train the people we work with, starting with the strategists and the creatives and the CMOs and the marketing teams, to understand that actually by utilizing this and adopting this way of working, we can truly drive some efficiencies. And I'm going to come back to that because I do think that's quite a big part of the educational process. And one of the things that Chile has been very good at, and I've seen it in action a number of times, is the ability to help educate, to help start educating the creative community to understand that actually utilizing technology is not a bad thing. Defining a process, I guess, again, is quite an interesting area where we need a little bit more emphasis around understanding that we have a common way of working, a common process that works across multiple different channels. And then the last one there is actually making sure we've got the right technology. Sounds obvious, but again, quite a complex thing to be able to resolve. If you then understand that and you look at it in a sort of map this way, and I use this a couple of times just to try to illustrate the complexities a brand goes through sometimes. If you're a global brand, this can get even more complicated. But if you think about this from a brand's point of view and a client trying to work with and deliver an advertising campaign, you can start to understand why the complexities we all talk about and why perhaps certain agencies are doing things one way and other agencies are doing things the other way, and which means ultimately the client doesn't get a very joined up picture. So they've all got perhaps agencies, they've got multiple agencies. If they're working in silos, they'll be working with multiple different agencies in specialist different areas who have production companies around the world that will perhaps do things in a slightly different way. You've got your brand problems, you've got your brand guardianship going on, you've got the quality, you've got the, is there a consistent theme to that, and are you getting all the data coming back into one place? Overlaying that, you then have this continuous, on a day-to-day, week-to-week situation where technology is coming through. There's more and more and more and more technology coming to the market, making it more and much harder to make any decision that you need to. I've worked with, as I said, a few companies. One of the companies I've worked with a while back had this. It's like work. All I can think it to is like a kids' football match. The ball goes over there and everyone runs over to there. So the new thing comes out and everyone runs over to that corner, and then another new thing comes out and we all run over to that corner. We keep reacting to either what a client's telling us or what the market thinks it needs to have, rather than actually as a business, we need to be the experts and we need to build a solution that delivers ultimately what we know our clients need. But it makes it a little harder when you start looking at this, and this is only going to get more complicated as time goes on. So we sort of needed to change the way we start thinking about this. And I've sort of used this concept of building out 5 pillars. So we start with actually the strategy and the big idea. And I'll go through these in a little bit more detail, but we start with the big idea, what's the market activity, what's the drivers behind all this. Then we then move into actually looking at where the data is coming from. How do we then bring all this data, the consumer insight, the media data, where it's going, the languages, the product, the prices, all of that real rich, important data together. The process that we're going to utilize to actually deliver this stuff through, and it's got to be a very simplified process. It doesn't want to be lots and lots of different processes. It's a much more optimized and standardized way of working. Technology that we're going to underpin all this through, so we can actually make sure we've got a really solid foundation to build our solution on. And the last one is the commercial modeling, which I think, again, is quite an important area. From an agency point of view, I think this is a barrier to entry. I feel a lot of agencies struggle with the whole concept of commercializing this process, and how do we commercialize this new world of automation. And I think that's definitely an issue for a lot of agencies that are struggling as they transition their businesses to go through to the next iteration of what they're doing. I think the idea of actually really understanding how we can make less time, lots more output, and more of a commercial model is an interesting challenge. But just dropping back to the first point in terms of the big idea, I think, again, I mentioned it earlier in terms of the ability to train and educate a lot of our creative colleagues to understanding that actually what we're doing with technology can really and does help them deliver a better job. A lot of the time, and again we heard it today, that it actually doesn't impact creativity. A lot of the time through my experience, a lot of the creative teams have been very scared about using technology because they feel it's going to impact their big idea and it's going to dilute their idea. It doesn't have to, and there just need to be a different mindset and a step change in terms of how to do that. And I think that's starting to happen, but I guess there's a lot more work that needs to be done there. Data, we've talked about it, the ability to consistently build this and bring this together. Product data, media data, and when I talk about media data, I'm talking about the spaces, but the technical space, the technical information behind that, what size, where it's gone, what's the dimensions, the color space, the variations, the frame rate, all of that technical data has to be pulled together. It cannot be a manual process, otherwise the whole thing starts dropping away. So all of this rich data that sits in the back of all this to make this operationally work better and more optimized is absolutely crucial and critical. Even language, which I forget, but it's probably one of the most important things, the ability to get that transcreated language in a format that can be used again and again and again, that's consistent. So you don't have to continuously re-enter it. You don't need hundreds and hundreds of project managers messing around with Excel spreadsheets. Consolidated data is a much structured, and in a structured way is a much simpler thing to do. The process, I can talk for hours about process, but again, making sure that we've got a process. From an omni-channel point of view, you have probably 70% of the process can be consistent. There's just a small area, little parts of that there that need to be twisted depending on if it's a video, if it's digital, if it's print. It's got a slight different part of the process that tweaks at the end, but ultimately that process should be consistent and effective. That's providing you the information, the analytics and the data to be able to then improve the process upstream, the whole thing again. The technology, critical, but I heard it again earlier today. Technology's been around for so long. The technology is way, way ahead of all of us in terms of what it can do. We're just trying to catch up and understand, figure out how to plumb it all together. But the technology's there. You know, we've seen today, we've just seen another great demonstration in terms of how that's evolved. How are we going to take that on and really embed it into our day-to-day operating models? So the technology is absolutely there. It's evolving at a rate of knots. And I probably could do a 30-minute conversation about just commercials, because I think the commercial thing is quite a big impact it's having on a lot of businesses. And I do think and I know I've said it already, but I do think it's the biggest barrier for most of the big advertising agencies making the spin and making the step change into this space and really optimizing this way of working. I'm going to share with you a piece of it's a project I'm doing at the moment for a global brand as a consultative piece. And if I've ever been given a perfect brief, it's sort of like, so David, if you're going to start from scratch, how would you go and build this thing? What would it look like? And it's like, well, because we want to build a studio, an agency, from scratch. And how would you go about it? Interestingly, I started with technology first. Don't get me wrong, I was obviously interested in the people all the way along this thing, but I thought, let's rethink this a little bit, and let's look at the technology. So what's up on screen, and there's obviously more detail behind this, but effectively it's the main steps through from strategy, origination, idea, utilizing, and I haven't put a logo in that top corner around the MOM system in terms of what platform it should be, to be seen. But effectively, it's where all my briefing starts, my planning starts, my strategy starts, where I can get all my briefs that I can brief from the client into me. So it's basically a campaign management tool that sits at the beginning of the process. I then move into this product called Media Lake. Media Lake is the ability to aggregate and look at all content that's currently out in the marketplace, but bring it back into one place. It's totally technology agnostic in its approach. It will simply link out to every single piece of any asset management system, every storage facility, any social media channels, online channels. It will go back and it will look at all the assets and pieces of content I have and aggregate it and bring it back into one view, allowing me to understand exactly where all my content is in the world and where it's been used or not. I then move into the concept stage. And we have Dragonfly and we have Creative X, two products that are exceptionally good at looking at the creative idea. Is it fit for purpose? Will it work? Is it on brand? Will it get the cut through depending on which channels I go through? And it gives you a lot of information that you can have real time, that you can make informed decisions before you go ahead and actually publish it. I move that big idea, I move it into market, I then start utilizing the fantastic products like Chili to be able to automate this, because I now know that my creative is going to work. I now know, because I've had the planning tool and I understand where I'm going to push my piece of content, depending which channel. I can now go and create it and I can build it. And they can push it through for Sprinkler and Creative X again to make sure that did it land, did it get the click through, did it build, did it get to the return on investment I thought, and I can go off around the cycle again. Covering that is this concept of these virtual studios, the ability to build virtual studios, have all all of these pieces of technology sitting within inside this virtual studio that I can switch on to whoever I want to at a switch of a button. I get around security issues, I get around costs, I get around hardware costs, I get around the ability to buy the best talent. I also get around the idea of actually playing or utilizing people in any part of the world I want to, because it's a real-time virtual studio 24/7. So I'm just playing with an idea that I'm just sharing with you, but I think the point I'm trying to make here is more down to the fact that building a new type agency, I'm now starting from the technology scenario rather than the people, and then building from that point on. So I'm going to be building out something that's perhaps got a little bit more structure, consistency, and the ability to continuously build volume as we go. And does it all work? I said at the beginning that I've got some stats. I have got some stats. I've got some real life scenarios. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be putting brands up there, but I am going to give you some ideas. You know, the fact that this whole concept of being able to have a full technology ecosystem that's focused around omni-channel can really drive these efficiencies. So a large car manufacturer on a campaign, this is really emphasizing the point, campaign. It's not their continuously way of working. They all use different ways of working depending on which campaign they're doing. Nearly 800 pieces of localized video delivered in 7 days rather than 5 weeks. Why wouldn't you want this all the time? Why would you not be pushing for this all the time? I've got a 62% saving. I've got a significant improvement in speed to market, but so why would that not be on the next campaign? I know they didn't run this the second time around. Credit card companies, one of the big 3 credit card companies that we produced nearly 900 pieces of omni-channel content, 7 days, 7 language in 4 days rather than 6 weeks. Massive difference. It was actually deemed one of their most successful brand consistent campaigns they'd ever run. It's sort of like, well, it shouldn't be a surprise to you, but it seems that it is. And then why would you not run that again? But they didn't. Big global fashion brand, huge volumes of continuously going through again and again and again in terms of producing content. Over 1,100 pieces of omni-channel content that was being pushed out. And again, the whole idea there was speed to market. But the interesting fact that came out, when you then look at the local markets to see how they've reacted, they've had the best localized in terms of the click-throughs and engagement they've ever had. So again, because they've got that consistency from the big branding campaigns that's working in local campaigns, it's working again and again and again. And lastly, big global drinks brand that's sitting there, that again, similar sort of thing, but this time they had a whole load of legal and compliance issues that they had historically been working again and again on, quite hard on, but because they had a structured, automated, templated way of working, they could control their local markets around their legal and compliance issues in market and then resolve a number of those legal things that were happening on a fairly regular basis. So I've gone through a million miles an hour, and there's a lot of stuff in there, and I said I sort of posed a question, but I couldn't answer it. I sort of hinted at it. There's lots of reasons why it's not catching on. All I will say is that people in this room, and over the course of the last 2 days, are part of the solution that are starting to come together to try to drive this through. I actually think it's not a case of when, it's just if. Sorry, it's not a case of if, it's a case of when. This will all start coming together, but actually we've got to then make sure that all of the big agencies can actually jump on board with that, or there's a bloody great big opportunity for some more businesses to jump through to really take an advantage with some of the clients. I guess it's sort of, Bill Gates sums it up quite well, because he had this quote and he's used it 1,000,001 times. It's something that always sticks in my head. Many a times in board meetings when you start talking about this is such a true, it's a true sentence, and it's a true statement in terms of if you actually take technology and you take automation and you apply it to an effective and efficient way of working, you will drive efficiency. Absolutely guaranteed. However, if you do exactly the same but drive it and put it into an inefficient way of working, you're going to drive inefficiency again and again. You're going to produce bad things, but quite quickly. So I think the technology is working for you or working against you, but we've all got to start utilizing our technology and our processes in a much more consistent way. And I thank you.